My name is Abdi Phenomenal from Poet Nation. So I'm a spoken word artist from East Africa. I'm from Somalia. I was born there. Everybody in the world can hear the voices of the people that are going through this thing, the voices of the love.
All they're asking for is clothes to put on, just enough food to eat before it's all gone. No time to debate who's right and who's wrong. Man-made or from God, someone tagged all along.
At the moment, that's the best we can do, with the little supplies that we've got.
The second time that this famine is happening in the last 20 years, and this time it's gotten a lot worse.
I just want to see you smile.
I've lived here the last 17 years. Are you a Somali? Are you a Kenyan? Or who are you?
I'm a refugee. A lot of the young kids are doing a lot of great things. Happy, jumping around.
Welcome to your weekly program, BelAhdan, the show that brings the Somali community to your living room. As we know, Minnesota has the biggest Somali community out of Somalia, and it's very exciting. They really brought Islam and brought Africa and brought many exciting things in the Twin Cities, cuisines, art, so many things about Somali community. But in the mainstream media, they all pick up on the negative news. We want to talk about a wonderful story here. We have a very special guest. We have Abdi Phenomenal. He is really a spoken word artist. He uses poetry to enchant and what's the word I'm looking for here, and empower the Somali youth. And I know the Somali youth here have a major problem. They are pressed and kind of from both ways, traditional parents and the mainstream culture. So we'll talk about their issue and how poetry can play a role in really empowering our youth. Welcome to BelAhdan, Abdi. Thank you so much. Abdi Phenomenal. I know there is a story there.
Yes.
Phenomenal. I love that.
Well, actually, I started writing around when I was 12 years old. And one of the first person that I started reading about was Maya Angelou. Maya Angelou was my favorite poet. And she wrote this poem called Phenomenal Woman. And I really like the way that she wrote in the most simplest form when it comes to poetry. So I made a version of it called Phenomenal Man. And that was one of the first pieces that I wrote. One of my best friends used to go to the University of Minnesota. And when I went to the University of Minnesota, they had this huge event where there was 350 people coming out. And my friend told me to come out and perform with him. And I said, I don't perform, I just write. And I was really afraid, I don't go in front of people. So he told me to come up with him. I'll go. I said, I'm only gonna go up there if you come up there with me. He came up there with me, I recited the poem. And the feeling that I got in front of all those people was a feeling that I could never ever explain, because it was carrying out, the importance of carrying out a message in front of people is important to me.
What was the event about? What was
the event was about, it was a Somali cultural night. So talking about traditions, doing traditional dances and all those sorts of things. And from there on, people came up to me and, was talking to me about my pieces. And the name just kind of stuck. They used to call me Phenomenal. And I just stuck with that name. So that's how much I love my Angela.
You are the phenomenal man now. but Somali youth, like any other youth in this country, we have youth problem.
Yes.
But when there is a problem with Somali youth, we always tie it to Islam or terrorism, and I think the Americans mainstream thinking, or the American mainstream media, or even our security, national security, and our security forces, they are missing the point by when they really focus too much on the terrorism and all that, and not looking at it as a Somali youth problem like any other youth problem that has violence, drugs, and all that. So how challenging for you to reach out to those Somali youth that are torn apart between traditional back home, at home there is a different world, outside of home it's totally different.
Exactly. When growing up here as youth and watching them, and you come from Somalia, a war-torn country, for over 22 years, when you're in your house, you are Somali. You speak Somali, you dance Somali, you talk Somali, you breathe Somali. And when you come outside of your house, you're in America.
Yeah.
So it's balancing both of it. There's an identity struggle there, and it's really frustrating. And through that turmoil of trying to be American and be Somali
How
at the
much
same
American
time,
can
exactly.
be. Yeah,
And you have the people outside judging you, and then you have your family saying, "Hey, keep your culture, keep your religion," but then you grew up here. So through that turmoil, comes dropping out of school, going into gangs, doing all these drugs, and losing yourself and who you are, and ending up in the jail system, and coming back out and finding out that you have no future. And you have somebody
become a career criminal.
Exactly, and then you have somebody who says you can do better and takes you back home to join Al-Shabaab, and that's where your life ends. So what I try to do in my poetry is try to inspire those youth, and try to figure out, and explain to them how why identity is important, why culture is important, give them a different perspective as far as education and where they come from and who they are, and just bring a little life to them.
It's interesting because we're such an oral culture,
Yes.
we might not read, might not follow script and text and all that, but we kind of, might not go to school, not get our education from school, we get it from elderly, wise men, people telling stories, storytellers.
Exactly.
And that's how we get our education, how indoctrinated in the community. So poetry is a very powerful form of communication. And you said that you didn't know you were even you have that talent. You was just discovered. So tell us a little bit about your own growing up in this country and how you made that transition to become just somebody active and successful and all that.
Right.
How challenging for you growing up? You were here.
I came from, I was born in Somalia, and I left there when I was 3 in 1991 when the war broke out.
So you were 3 and you came here right away?
I came here when I was 5.
So it's still young.
Exactly.
So
yes.
tell us a little bit about your struggle. Maybe that give us, kind of segue to what's going on with the other youth in the Somali community.
Yes. When I was born in Somalia, I stayed there for about 3 years. The war broke out, and when the war broke out, I went to one of the largest refugee camps in the world called Dadaab Refugee Camp.
And where is that?
That's in northeastern part of Kenya.
Okay.
And I stayed there for about 5 years. And for those 5 years, it was a struggle to survive.
You remember any of this? You were very young.
I remember pieces of it. I don't remember all of it. I remember standing in lines for food. I remember sleeping in huts. I remember, playing soccer and running around with the little kids.
Always soccer comes to the rescue.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah.
Were you family there, or you were alone?
All of us. My 3 brothers and my sister and my mother.
Wow.
Yes. So we stayed there for about 5 years. After those 5 years, we moved straight to Manhattan, New York.
Wow.
Yes. So it was a huge transition for me.
There's a lot of refugee city there.
Exactly. Where there's a lot of different people who speak different languages than me. So I had to make something out of it and try to learn the language and try to learn the culture. And through that, struggle of identity and trying to find myself, I came to Minneapolis, Minnesota. I came to Cedar Riverside, where I had family. And as you know, Cedar has the most populated area of Somalis. And when I moved there is when I started to discover some more that there's people like me who speak the same language, and started to regain my culture and those things. And how I really got into spoken word is, I would say that I'm in a way a product of the media, because the media was speaking for the Somali community.
Representation. That's a problem we have.
So there's Al-Shabaab, there's, famine, they saw Somali people as people who are struggling, who are in war, who can't help themselves, and are not good in educational systems. So what I tried to do was try to change the narrative and find myself, writing about pieces to, change the story into a positive story and tell people about who we are, where we come from, our oral history. Somalia, every time there's a war, between different clans or between different regions, there used to be, it was a war of of the written language. It was never picking up guns and swords.
Yeah, I see.
When
The verbal war.
Exactly.
This is
When
like
was-
they do that in that Starbucks.
Exactly.
Right?
Starbucks.
What do you call that? It has a name for
It's
it.
called fadikudir.
I don't know. I'm afraid to lose the
well-
tooth saying that word.
You don't want to say that.
Yes, nice. And this is well-established tradition. Like not every time you're going to establish new rules. The rules are set.
The rules are set. You come there and you talk and you talk and you talk and you talk about everything that revolves in your area, your Somali community. You know, it's funny how, like in the middle of Hamr, you know, everything that's going on in the middle of Somalia, people know in the middle of Starbucks. They're having conversations about it right there,
Interesting.
halfway across the world.
And it's,
So
you
it's-
know, technology.
That's how I'll tell you how communication is like
Well,
really.
it's fine. There is something here that we can teach the mainstream youth. You know,
Exactly.
you know how non-violently settle conflict and settle. You know, here we have the. You know, yesterday was the 6th anniversary of the shooting in that Newton high school, where 23 or 25 people were gunned down by just somebody probably was upset. I mean,
Exactly.
so we talked about guns, and this country is a violent culture, and the history is violent, guns everywhere, and somehow people want to have their guns, their cars. And here you have the Somali coming up with a very creative, very interesting way of settling conflict. Just go and talk about it.
Exactly. Dialogue is a solution to everything.
And there is a loser, there is an actual at the end, somebody admit that they lost the argument, or how that works.
As far as
When you have this non-verbal war or non-verbal communication or debate between clans or between... so
that's when we resort to the guns.
yeah, I know, but
and it's not that's
yeah.
not how it's supposed to be.
exactly. But when it's happening in Starbucks, this is there is no guns there, but people just keep talking, and everybody, passionate about their issue.
Exactly.
So is there a rules of who's winning the argument, or
I think
the idea is not to win?
No, I think no. It's in those areas, in coffee shops, and people are socializing, people are talking, people are having conversations about their communities, what's going on, how to uplift it, how to change it, what to do about back home when they want to go back home. They have conversations about their youth that are struggling. They have a conversation about the mother that's here raising the kids, a single mother. They have conversations about the fathers who had degrees back home who are now here that are trying to make something out of themselves.
Is it open in a community that people talk about this major problem? Seems like we kind of sometimes we shower under the rugs. We don't talk about it until something happened in the school or something happened in the street and something like that.
I think our community is headed towards a positive direction now, and it's changing. And before, when we got here, we were too busy trying to figure out who we are and
survive,
and how to survive in the system that we came to. But now we've been here, for a good amount of time, to the point where we find that dialogue is a solution to everything. Dialogue is a solution to war. Dialogue is a solution to our youth that are struggling. So right now, one of my main goals is to continue uplifting specifically the youth, because they are the ones who struggle.
So what's
the
the biggest challenge the youth are facing now? Is
now.
it different problem than the youth back home or in other part of the world?
Back home, they're really they're struggling to survive. When it comes to food, when it comes to education, when it comes to just living. Over here, we are struggling to integrate. We're struggling to try to find ourselves. We're struggling to, the kids are, struggling in the educational systems. Kids are struggling, and through that whole generational gap between how the parent thinks differently and the youth thinks differently. So it's about creating some sort of bridge and dialogue between those two and understanding each other. Like, mother, where did you come from? Tell me about our history. Who was my father? What did we used to do back home? What did we used to eat? And for the mother, it's like, she's asking her son, how is the school system here? Because most of the parents that live here sacrifice their life so their kids can go to school.
I see. So there is expectation.
Exactly, there's expectations.
So as a Somali youth living in this, is born here, most of them, And what I'm trying to get here are the Somali youth problem different than the mainstream youth problems?
No.
Or is this an American problem?
I don't think it's any different.
Yeah.
I think it's the same. It's you know, when you are youth, you know, you are in general. Everybody goes through the phase of trying to figure out where they are, what they want to do, how to figure themselves out. You know, it didn't take me until after high school to figure out really who I was. You know, I tried to figure out what I wanted to do, the dreams that I wanted.
So what's the role model? Everybody grow up with the role models. So the role model will be the culture icons, Madonna, or you know, or they have different role models.
The history of this, the sad part is the history of Somalia, the art, the culture, and everything is completely wiped out. So growing up here, you know, who we see here is, you know, our role models, you know.
Yes.
Like some of the kids look up to musicians, some of the kids look up to writers, some of the kids look up to all these different sorts of role models. Some of the kids, their parents are their role models. For personally, me, my mom is my role model because she's been through, you know, so much to raise me.
So it starts with the family.
Exactly.
You know, I know we're run out of time. Could you, you know, I would be interested to see some of the poems that you are using. One inspired you, one inspired so can we end that with reciting a poem for us?
Yes. This one piece here that I wanted to recite is specifically talking about youth, and it's talking about the generational gap, and it's talking about telling the elders to kind of, you know, slow down because, you know, the youth are going through so much struggle and they need to be empowered, and we need to listen to them and have a voice for them and talk about their struggles a little bit. We live, we breathe with our wings open, running fast, get caught with our limbs holding, caught in the sense of our dreams being broken. The youth has no choice but to sell their dreams for a token. Old age is unnoticed, the youth is unfocused. Al-Shabaab is trying to tell you they'll bring change, but only if you hold this. But I'm holding peace in one hand and freedom on the other. I'm holding peace in one hand and freedom on the other. And besides, what's the difference between galvanizing the bleak and sanitizing the heat, between utilizing the weak and institutionalizing the free? It's between not being able to see and what is the door of opportunities if you've swallowed your own key. And only to stay sane, you have to confide in truth because truth is woven in the fabrics of the women and the youth. Thank you.
That is phenomenal. I know. Now I know how you got your last name. That is wonderful. Thank you so much for coming. That is a great. I'm inspired. I'm an old man, but I'm still inspired by this.
Oh,
but
you have youth in you.
Thank you. Abdi Phenomenal is a wonderful using poetry to empower the Somali youth. And we're going to end this show with, I know, couple of days ago, there was a major artist event in downtown St. Paul in Northern Park, where arts come from all over the world, and they have an art nights where people come. Any art can come here and express their art. So downtown St. Paul was taken over by artists, and they invite a Cairo artist with street artist, and he used stencil art. You know, you all remember Tahrir Square and all this written street arts and graffiti on the walls in Muhammad Mahmoud Street. And Mizna sponsored one of the artists who came and expressed herself in Arab Spring and Egypt Revolution with her art, and she taught some of the people there to really to do graffiti or street arts, and I met her there. She was reframing, you know, she was a little bit intimidated by the camera, and it was amazing that coming all the way to this country and still intimidated by the camera. She was, you know, under siege for 18 days and bullet and, you know, tear gas and all that. But still, anyway, so I talked to some of the people who were there, and I went to the tunnel where they turn it to Muhammad Mahmoud Street, where they have all the graffiti on the walls, and everybody participated. It was a wonderful evening, all evening from 5:30 a.m. to 7:30 the next day. So it was a wonderful evening. So I'll let you enjoy that piece. Technically, maybe not up to par, but enjoy it anywhere. We'll see you next week. Assalamu alaikum, and God bless you all.
want to paint it, it's just kind of cool. It's for art.
Are you an artist?
I do it for fun. I don't know. Everyone's an artist.
So what? I like that. So what is this all about? Do you know?
No, I know that all of this was translated down there from Arabic by I don't know, just into like English, and then anybody. I know they all mean something different, something special, but I don't really know what they mean.
But do you know what this whole art's about?
I don't know what it's all about actually.
Like Arab Spring, maybe?
Maybe, yeah. I mean, they're all really cool. They're all really different. I don't know.
You know, you see it's different than like graffiti in subway in New York?
Like this has a meaning to it, and like the graffiti in like the subways is just kind of like, I don't know, it's just kind of bad and it's kind of mean, but this has like a really cool meaning behind it.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Do you know what you just did?
What are you doing?
So what is it about?
There's like 100 different participatory arts and different things like that. So
Okay, so this is an art.
like an overnight art gallery.
I see.
Show, yeah.
And how do people get in?
You just come. Just kind of walk through, do whatever it is.
Anybody can come.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you so much.
Very well.
We've been to sport. Address street art as in Tahrir Square and street art here in downtown Minneapolis, and how the Americans related to it. People don't even know what it's saying, but are excited about it. So talk to us a little bit. Take it from any way you want it.
Well, I think most people are doing it for fun here.
Yeah.
They're looking at the translations only very quickly, and I don't think. But some of them are trying to understand what this Arab Spring is at the same time that they're doing this. So, street art, of course, has always been around as a form of protest. And sometimes it's not even at times of revolution. Graffiti has been always a political expression. If you look at the graffiti art in New York and other places, there's a lot of very important political messages contained in them. And so,
But how's it different on the graffiti art on subway and train? This is mostly political. The other
this
ones
is a very conscious political with a message that is transformative on in a very direct way, right? This is an attempt to remove a regime. And so when this was produced, the intentions of this art were very focused.